Meet Aileen Wos, an infamous trailblazer in the dark world of crime and murder. Deemed the first female serial killer by the American media, her gruesome acts left the nation in shock, and even today her story continues to captivate audiences. Join us as we explore Aileen Wos' disturbing case, delving into her troubled childhood, her murderous rampage, and the events that eventually led to her capture, trial, and execution. Aileen Wos was born on February 29, 1959, in Rochester, Michigan, to her parents Diane Wos and Leo Pittman. Her early years were rough and filled with trauma. Diane and Leo divorced before Aileen was born, and Aileen never knew her biological father, who was imprisoned for child rape and took his own life in prison. When Aileen was just 4, her mom abandoned her and her older brother Keith. The pair were adopted by Diane's parents, Britta and Lori, but this situation proved even worse for the children. Aileen's grandfather, Lori, was a harsh disciplinarian who physically, emotionally, and sexually abused her. Aileen developed an explosive temper, which contributed to her difficulty making friends. At the age of 11, Aileen began offering sexual favors to boys in her neighborhood in exchange for cigarettes, earning her the nickname Cigarette Pig. She ran away from home on numerous occasions and ended up in juvenile detention. Life got even more challenging when Aileen became pregnant at age 14. She was sent to a Detroit home for unwed mothers, where she gave birth to a baby boy, who was then put up for adoption. After that, Aileen dropped out of school and started working as a prostitute. Aileen lost her grandmother Britta, who had struggled with alcoholism, to cirrhosis of the liver, and Lori refused to care for her any longer. Aileen decided it was time for a new beginning and hitchhiked to Florida. It was there that she met Louis Fell, a wealthy yachtsman nearly 5 decades her senior. They were married in 1976, but the marriage didn't last long. Fell left Aileen after a month, citing her violent temper and accusing her of beating him with his own cane. That same month, Aileen lost her brother Keith to cancer. It was around that time that Aileen started ramping up her criminal behavior. She was arrested for assault, disorderly conduct, drunk driving, forged checks, and resisting arrest. She served time in prison for attempting to rob a convenience store while drunk and wearing a bikini. Then, in 1986, Aileen met Tyria Moore at a gay bar in Daytona, Florida, and the two struck up an intense relationship. But Aileen was possessive and jealous of Tyria and grew angry when her partner interacted with other people. Aileen continued engaging in sex work along Florida highways, and it was then that her criminal activities took a murderous turn. Richard Mallory, a repair shop owner who was known to frequent prostitutes, became her first murder victim in November 1989. Aileen told Tyria that Mallory attacked her, and she killed him to protect herself. But evidence collected later by the police told a different story. From there, Aileen went on a killing spree, killing 5 more men over the next year: David Spears, Charles Carskaden, Troy Burris, Charles Humphreys, and Walter Antonio. The murders were brutal. All of the men were shot at close range. Police had difficulty connecting the murders, though, as Aileen used a variety of aliases while working as a prostitute. But then, in July 1990, police connected Aileen to the vehicle of a missing missionary, Peter Seams. Witnesses placed her in the vehicle with Seams, and her fingerprint was found on the car's door handle. The authorities were closing in on Aileen, prompting Tyria to leave and flee to Pennsylvania. The police tracked her down, and she cut a deal with them to gather evidence against Aileen. Tyria was able to get Aileen to admit to murder on a recorded phone call, and once captured, she confessed to 7 murders on videotape. The public and the media were fascinated with the case. Aileen was nicknamed the Damsel of Death, and the media described her as America's first female serial killer. During her murder trial for Richard Mallory, Aileen testified that Mallory had raped and assaulted her, but these details did not match her taped confession. While Mallory had been previously convicted of sexual assault, the jury found Aileen guilty of first-degree murder and robbery, and the judge sentenced her to the death penalty. Aileen went on to plead guilty to 5 more murders, receiving a death sentence for each one. She was sent to a Florida state prison to await her execution. During this time, she stuck to her story, saying she acted in self-defense, and openly talked about the trauma from her past. But her appeals didn't work, and on October 9, 2002, she was executed by lethal injection. Her case is still debated by the public. Some say she should have gotten a lighter punishment because of her history of abuse and mental health problems, while others argue that her struggles shouldn't excuse her brutal crimes. Aileen Wos' story brings up difficult, complex topics. It demonstrates the negative impact that abuse and neglect can have on children. While it's undeniable that Aileen committed terrible crimes, it's equally true that she was a victim of abuse with a history of trauma. This story highlights how those on the margins of society can be pushed to violence. Aileen's history of abuse, neglect, poverty, mental illness, and homelessness pushed her towards prostitution, which eventually led to her first murder. One wonders if our society had done a better job supporting Aileen in her early years, if these murders could have been avoided. Thank you for watching. What are your thoughts on this case? Do you think the death penalty was the right punishment for Aileen Wos, or should she have received a lighter sentence due to her troubled past? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell icon for more videos about serial killers and true crime.